Good morning, everybody. This is Greg Aden with Aden Leadership, and I've got the pleasure of introducing the world to Shae Clark. I shouldn't say the world because a lot of people already know who he is, but maybe to my world and the people that follow your Servant Leadership podcast. Good morning, Shae. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Greg. I appreciate you having me on the podcast and giving me the opportunity to talk.
Absolutely. One of the reasons I reached out, and not everyone knows how we met, so I'll just go ahead and say that. And when it was recommended that I look into becoming part of the executive coaching program there at First Bank, you and your cohort Taylor were the first two I met, and you interviewed me accordingly. So the world, I give you a lot of thanks because at some point during that interview or afterwards, you and Taylor could have gotten together and said, what in the world do we want this guy in our company for? But so thank you for the opportunity. It's been really cool.
No, it's been great to have you join that leadership program, and I know it's been really successful, and everybody's really enjoyed having you join and be helping coaching and doing that. So we appreciate you coming forward and meeting with us to discuss everything.
Well, thanks, and reflect back to you. And what we're going to find out from Shae today is who he is, where he's from. But a lot of what I do on the Servant Leadership podcast, Shae, is focus on the why. And so if you could just, you can go into your background or whatever, but if someone said, and I like this question, if a 12-year-old was riding up an elevator with you and they looked up and said, hey, dude, or hey, guy, or hey, man, or hey, person, what's your why? What would you say to that little guy or that girl?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think for me, at least in the position that I hold today with the bank, and I'll go professional and then personal a little bit. But on the professional side, I think, the opportunity to provide jobs, talent acquisition and that and help individuals from start to finish, whether that's helping them to create their first resume or going all the way to finding and landing their dream job. But that's a great feeling to be able to provide that, to give somebody that opportunity to start an adventure into a new organization like First Bank and have that ability to make a career out of it. And so I really enjoy the aspects of hiring. And so on the professional side, the why is just seeing that fulfillment of being able to offer positions to people, see them, the excitement that goes along with that, with a new opportunity, new chapter in life. And so I really enjoy that. And then on the personal side, my why is rooted in my faith. I'm a strong Christian believer, and so you're called to serve others. You're called to lead by putting yourself last and putting others before you. And so a lot of what drives me and my why is that servant mentality of elevating others and lowering yourself so that others can succeed and in the faith and or in personal life. And so that's been a big driver for me on the why and the personal side anyways.
So a lot of people listening to this and hearing talent acquisition, Shae Clark, First Bank, vice president, they may wonder how you got there. And just doing some of my own research, I recognized you spent some time in the Navy and or the Marines. And tell me about those experiences. And you were recognized for on three different occasions for recognizing your leadership or how you showed up and above and beyond. But tell us about that experience. And then after that, how did you decide where you wanted to go to school? And how did First Bank come into your life? I know that will be interesting to our listeners.
Yeah. So I joined the Navy right out of high school. I think like I was 17, I was young, a lot of young guys, is that you really don't know where or what you want to do. I didn't have the opportunity to go and spend money in college to try to figure it out. Grew up not really in a position to do that. So I decided I wanted to travel as much as I could. And so the Navy seemed like a great opportunity to do that. And so I joined up, and that's what I got to do is, I was what they call an air crewman. And then when I wasn't flying as part of the crew on a cargo transport plane, I was working on maintaining the plane. So doing maintenance engine work. And so during that time, like the military does, it puts you and elevates you into positions of leadership very early on. So you have to really figure out, and I think what is also really good is it's kind of a leadership academy where you get to see good and bad. And I would hope that everybody in the military is a good leader, but it's not the truth. And so I got to work under some people that didn't treat their individuals well. They really looked at you as a means to an end to the next stage. And so I learned from them to say, what do I not want to do in my leadership? What are things that I noticed that when I feel a certain way towards a leader, what did they do to make me feel that way? Is that something that I can control if I am in a position? And then as I progressed in my military career, I switched into leadership roles at that time. And so, oftentimes you're leading others that may be older than you, different backgrounds, different viewpoints, and you really have to learn to adapt to individuals. And one thing that I kind of took in that is there's a saying, trust but verify. And that's usually meaning you watch over and you try to, but what I always viewed it as is that I trust the individuals that work for me to get what they do done, and I verify they have the tools necessary to accomplish what they need instead of verifying their work. And if I can do that and bring that in, then I notice that people oftentimes respond really well to that. They're not going to, they're going to try and do the right thing. And it was really great. And military is known for sometimes harsh leadership, and I've never bought into that. I don't think I raised my voice once while I was in the military when I was working with somebody, because it was an effective tool. If you work and you ask, oftentimes people reciprocate that and they want to do those tasks if you ask in the right way. So I ended up doing that for 6 years, and then I transitioned over and decided, do I really want to do this? Because I traveled so much, and I had met my wife at the time, and I was gone about 8 months of my first year of marriage, and I said that's maybe not the course I want with a family. And so I made the decision at about 2 years before my contract was over to start the transition process and figure out, how do I set myself up for success after the military? And so I started looking at schools. My wife is from Colorado. And so I was thinking I could, go to a school online and then transition into maybe a brick and mortar when I got out, and we decided we would move to Colorado, Denver area. And so I looked at CSU, and they had a great program that was really military friendly. And so I got connected with them and was getting my accounting degree. It's something that came naturally to me, and I really was interested in kind of the accounting finance areas of organizations and what I could do there. So I transitioned out. We moved here, and I needed a job to help pay the bills. They still go on, unfortunately. And First Bank happened to be the one. So I started actually as a teller with the company, and then worked my way into that role. And I'm happy to talk more on that, but I want to see if there's any other questions.
Let me jump in and say I have a reaction to trust but verify. And I loved how you said you trust who you're working with and you verify that they have the tools to be successful. I believe, Shae, and again, I've been doing this a long time, that when I hear leaders say, I need to trust but verify, they don't really trust because they're verifying that they're actually doing it the way the leader would have done it themselves. But you said verify that they have the tools to be successful. So I've also learned that normally something that comes after the word but may not be true. And again, we don't need to get into that conversation, but it's something that I've latched onto. So I like trust and verify. I trust you, and I want to serve you to make sure that, or ensure that you have the tools. So I just wanted to bring that up. And the other thing that was interesting to me is you said that you've actually learned what bad leadership is from following others who in your mind or your heart weren't great leaders, and you were obviously around some excellent leaders. And yet we that don't have any knowledge of what it's like to be in the armed forces have this TV mentality about how brutally honest they are and how hard they are and how they need to bark and yell. And again, it's refreshing, honestly, to hear you say that. And then the other thing I love about what your journey has already said to me is you're a forward thinker. Before your commitment was out, you were transitioning out, preparing for. And let's give your wife a name, just for purposes of this conversation, to humanize her. What is her name?
Yeah, her name is Heather. So.
Heather, awesome. It's nice to know you found someone and then decided you wanted to spend your life with her. So Heather, thank you for helping shape Shae to who he might be, or who he is today and will be. So you transitioned over to First Bank, you became a teller. Today you're a vice president. Just in brief, how has that journey been? And did you see yourself moving into human resources and talent and acquisition? And if so, when did that become a vision that was clear?
Yeah, I'll be frank. When I started at First Bank, it was supposed to be my resume building organization. I didn't know much about the banking industry, but I didn't have a lot of experience in finance. And so while I
Mm,
was finishing my accounting degree, I decided a bank's a great place to learn. They
sure.
expose you to a lot in that industry, and I maybe could build upon that once I got my degree. But what I really fell in love with was the people at the bank and how they really gave the opportunity to empower you to have a voice in the company. So as a teller or the positions that I held, you can come up with an idea, and they really empower to follow that idea if it's one that's obviously viable and actually actionable for the company. And so I was able to voice those things, and they would empower that. And so it really caused me to say, well, what does the career look like in banking, and
Yeah.
specifically at First Bank? If I enjoy this company, why do I need to go somewhere else to try to find and fulfill a career? And so I ended up looking at what they call the management trainee program with the company, and you go into an officer role at that point, and officers make up about 10% of the company right now, but really it's that leadership track for the organization. And so I really resonated with that, to use the skills that I had already established to a certain extent in the military and continue to develop those. And so I ended up joining about after 2 years with the company in that program. And then I was a lender for a while. And during that time, being a veteran, I decided, hey, what are we doing to hire veterans into the company? And so I started asking human resources to say, what's your plan? I haven't run across a lot of veterans. Most veterans, unfortunately, don't think banking is the place they want to go to. They're thinking defense forces or police or
Sure.
something along those lines. And so I said, what are you doing to attract? And so I actually started attending events with our human resources department for veterans specifically. One, to be able to relate to those individuals, but what I really fell in love with was the role of recruiting and talent acquisition. And so, about I'd say 5 years into my time at the bank, an opportunity came available at human resources overseeing the talent acquisition function. And so I jumped on it, and was lucky enough to be chosen for the role. And so here I am about 3 years later in this role specifically, and I'm loving every second of it. I mean, they really are still empowering me to make that change, empower me to look at strategically for the company. How do we view hiring? How do we view our recruitment strategy, and different various opportunities to expand our presence out with veterans, with
Nice.
individuals with disability, with women and minority, and also just anybody in general through universities and various organizations. So it's been a great journey.
You said offline that one of the things that you wanted to discuss, or something that you really honor, is empowering people. And so it sounds like that was in your heart when you joined the organization. And then you said, what I heard you say is, that's what First Bank is about. They're about empowering people, especially through the management training program. I also noticed in my brief research that you are actually part of or involved with the Denver uh, Veteran Leadership Council, which
Yeah.
is really cool. And it sounds like your whole life is just kind of, it started with recognizing, acknowledging leadership, and here you are helping to now build leaders or create leaders, or give at least young leaders an opportunity to become maybe more impactful leaders in the world of First Bank. And you're doing what you love doing, I hear. Yes.
Yes, yeah, I really enjoy that opportunity to, one, either help people find roles in leadership that they
Yeah.
want to take that next step, or working with my team and leaders, or on that veteran side, with the Veteran Leadership Council, working with veterans in the community and different organizations to help empower those individuals as well. And so, yeah, I really resonate with that, leadership drive, and growing that area for individuals as well as myself.
Let me ask you this: as you're in your journey with First Bank, throw out a few people that you kind of worked with or admired. And we can even call them your mentors. Who have been some key people in your growth, Shae?
Yeah, I think the first one was my first manager that I worked with, and her name was Kathy Tolbert. She worked at the company for about 38 years
Wow.
in management for a majority of that time, and so she had a wealth of knowledge. But what she was really good at is seeing the skills in individuals and building those skills up, and making sure that you had the you were empowered to use them, that you understood them, and she was very good at making you recognize in yourself what sometimes is really tough to see,
Yeah.
and know that you can't do. And so she really helped to guide me. So she was probably the first one in the company. I was really lucky. She happened to hire me as well, but that she had really good leadership qualities. She understood how to empower people. She understood how to work with them, and but meet them where they're at instead of trying to make them meet her where she needed them to be. And so I think that was important. And then when I transitioned into the officer program, there was an individual named Brad Leal, and he was an officer that was a few years ahead of me, had been in the career for a while, and was a previous veteran. And I really resonated with him, but he really challenged me to think about, hey, what do you want in your career? Here's ways that you can accomplish that, but also, how do you want to grow, and how do you want to lead in the company? Because everybody has a leadership quality, and you kind of see as you grow, and you get more and more leadership
Yeah.
ability. But how do you want to be a leader? What's that impact? How do you want to leave that kind of leadership qualities on others as you're working with them? And so he really helped me and guided me as a mentor too through the corporate environment, because with veterans sometimes it's difficult when you're not used to a corporate
Yeah.
organization. You have to learn and do, because it operates so different than the military. So he really helped me there as well, and I'm really thankful for that.
And here recently, when you look over your shoulder over the last couple of years, who has, and again, whether they're in human resources, what's your main domain, and anybody else that comes to mind that has kind of taken you and taken a liking or interest in you, Shae, and said, "I believe in this young man."
Yeah, so Jill Elwood, who works in human resources, and she just transitioned to a new opportunity within the company, but she worked in human resources for a long time. And what
Right.
I really liked about Jill is that our personalities are probably as complete opposite as you can get. Like sometimes I'm direct, I'm not forceful, but direct. The way I view through reasoning and more logic based, and she kind of brought me into more. How do you think about people? How do you think about
Mm.
this? Or she challenged a lot of my uh, kind of how I think through and process. And so she really helped me to grow outside of my comfort level as a leader, and to
Good.
think differently, and to challenge that kind of general thought process that I had that had been ingrained for so long, but then also doing it in a way that was supportive, in a way that really gave me the tools to succeed in that, and was always available to just talk about whatever it was in leadership or just in general. Didn't have to. And I think where I really enjoyed with her is that she really took the time to get to know you on a personal level too, and invest in that. And that's an important piece, I think, in leadership, is that it's hard sometimes. I think people view leadership as it has to be separate, but their personal life impacts a lot of their professional. And so if you're not, obviously in tune with, or at least caring about them, it's hard to be authentic, in
Yeah.
my opinion, in leadership.
Amen. And you said something that I know one of the great leaders within First Bank, who's no longer there, Emily Robinson, had said there's life isn't always balanced. And in fact, she calls it a work life out of balance. And I had her and another very powerful woman on my show a couple years ago, and it was a great conversation because we have one life, we have one heart, we have two eyes, two ears, one nose. I mean, unless you can convince me otherwise, and I've said it many times on the show, and I believe you are a human being first, then you're a man and woman, and then you have an opportunity to be a great leader. But you can't just say, I'm a great leader. And I'm just going to ask you this. It's a simple question, but I want someone else to say it. Who decides if Shae Clark is a great leader?
The people that you're leading are going to be the ones deciding
Thank
whether
you.
you're a great leader. Yeah.
I just I just listen to some of these people tell the world how wonderful they are, and I just want to say, hey, person, get over yourself. And Rick Warren, who wrote has written a lot of books. I mean, he's famous for saying leadership starts with you, but it's not about you. It's not about you. And he was actually just recently quoted in a LinkedIn article that I participated in. And I'm just going to ask you, if young and emerging leaders are listening to this, 20 something, early 30s, I don't care, young and emerging leaders, meaning the future of their organizations, and maybe not the one they're in today, but let's just say, what do you say to them? Shae, what advice do you give them if they were really listening and they wanted to be a great leader and they were humble? What else would you give them as advice to become a great leader?
Yeah, I go back to, you have to put yourself last, and you have to put others first. And that doesn't mean to run yourself ragged. That means to, like I said, empower individuals to do the jobs, value their voice, give them the opportunity to voice their opinions, and take that opinion. There's still times where you're going to have to make a hard decision. There's multiple voices, but you want to empower them to be able to speak up. You want to be what I call, and I really like it, decentralized leadership, where they have the ability to lead. So you're empowering people to lead on all levels, whether that's a new person starting, there is leadership there. There's self-leadership. They can lead others on things that they know that others don't. And so really diving into, how do I get those individuals to maybe stop thinking as an individual contributor to more of I can lead in the role that I have today. I have a voice. I have that ability to bring input to the team, whether I'm day one or day 1,000. And how do I then, as a leader, take those opinions and take those thoughts and really make sure that my team knows that I value them, and then use that to drive you forward. You can't do it alone. And right. If you try to, you're going to fail. You're going to fail constantly. And so how do you empower them? How do you get people to stop thinking, well, I'm just this, or I'm just this? You've got so much more influence, so much more voice, so much more impact than you even realize on all levels of your team. And as leaders, we should be empowering people to feel that they can have those voices.
Beautiful. You know, I've interviewed a lot of people, Shae, and you've focused on empowering others a lot. And so I'm going to emphasize that going forward, because I believe it's not giving your power away. It's helping someone else, and you said it, value their voice. It's beautiful. Think about that. Getting somebody to value their voice. Now, that's also saying you could value the value of your voice. So when you are saying things, leaders, young leaders especially, are you saying things that have value? And are you saying things that will be valuable to others? So again, there's a lot to unwrap there, but I like this decentralized leadership as well. And there's not politics in everything that we do, but I believe we avoid things because we are afraid or intimidated by a title. And I believe that you would also agree that if we humanize the person instead of titleize the person, because I've always said your title means nothing to me. I appreciate the years you've spent in an organization, but I guarantee you vice president will not, or senior vice president, executive vice president, Shae Clark, wherever you decide you want to go, all the way to a president position, that will never be on your tombstone.
Yeah. And that's what and I think about that with, are individuals going to remember me for the person I was? They're not going to remember me for being, like you said, vice president, and they shouldn't, because that is the title that's given. So yes, I have certain, I would say, authority to make decisions on high levels, but it doesn't mean that as a leader that's what drives you, that I'm a vice president, and so my leadership style is X. Your leadership can be anything regardless of title, and how you're remembered as a person, what you did for those individuals, that's a lot more important than I was a vice president, that's what I want to be remembered. I'm going to retire one day, and if all I relied on was my title, nobody's going to care. Nobody's going to want to be around me. I want to make sure that I still have those relationships, and that I still invest in people even post career, because that's the.
Yeah, and you said a key word in my work. A lot of people ask me, why do I do what I do, and why did I leave a big job, blah blah blah. And it's the depth of the relationships that I create with my clients. I get to be authentically curious every single day and I mean just ask questions. That's when people are comfortable, then they share, and then I can help them more. And in your role, you're recruiting people and in acquiring talent so your organization can be more powerful and it can be better and more valuable to its stockholders, et cetera. And the people then have invested in it, and you get to be a very, very valuable gatekeeper to a certain degree. And you understand what it takes to be a great leader for First Bank, so you get to see if these men and women that you're bringing in have the skills. I also noticed that you choose to follow three different people, and I'll go in this order because this is very interesting to me. Is from a financial standpoint, you want to understand what the stock market does, so you follow Jennifer Welsh. You want to know all about HR, leadership, and learning and development, and you follow Josh Berzin. You also follow someone that anybody that has any inkling about leadership and what drives people, which is the why, you also follow Simon Sinek. And I bring this up for our listeners because here's a young man who has dedicated his life to the financial institutions of the world, this one, First Bank, helping people grow and identifying leadership. And then you've also followed someone that kind of gets it, because whether you're in leadership or not, your why is always what's going to drive you, period. So again, you're just a well-rounded, joyful human being, Shae, and I appreciate your time this morning. And I hope others listen to this and ask themselves, what's my why? Who should I follow? Who are my mentors? And I want to give a shout out to Kathy Tolbert. I didn't catch Brad's last name. Brad
Leal.
Okay. And then also Jill Elwood. And I know Jill is transitioning out of human resources into a compliance position. And I know Jill, and it warms my heart to hear you speak so glowingly of these three people, because I know there's others. We could talk about other folks that have influenced you, but I leave our listeners something that you said: empower other people and value their voice. And actually, I'm going to add, help them value the value of their voice, because that's all we have. And where does that voice come from? If it comes from our head, I don't believe that's the greatest way that we can think. But I want to know what you believe. I want to know what you feel. And that comes from our heart and our gut. And I'm just going to go out on a limb here, Shae, and tell me that sometime during your journey in the military, somebody challenged you or asked you to live from your heart and live for your gut, and don't overthink what it is you're doing, because we feel our way into the best decisions. Do you agree to that?
100%. Definitely had that individual, and to this day still stay in touch with that individual. So.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much. And I'll let you give our audience a last closing remark. If you wanted to share with anybody that's listening, what would you like to leave them with?
Yeah, I would just say to continually be curious, try to learn constantly. Leadership is a learning journey. You're never going to be done. And if you stay inquisitive, you stay wanting to know more and better yourself, then you will continue to grow. You'll continue to do that, and you'll continue to believe that you don't have it all together. You don't know everything about it, and that is helpful. So that's what I would say.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for wrapping this up. Again, Shae Clark, Vice President, Talent Acquisitions and Management at First Bank, just a powerful regional bank who is, if you're west of the Mississippi, you've seen the big orange box somewhere. And again, I just want to give full disclosure. I love working with the people and the future leaders and the existing leaders of First Bank. So again, it's been a great journey for me. So with that, I remind people to empower those around you, value other people's voices, and ask like you just said, ask more questions and be curious. So again, I thank you for your time, Shae Clark, and we'll see you again somewhere else. Until then, this is Greg Aden with Aden Leadership, and again, Shae Clark with First Bank was my guest. If you want to follow him, you can find him on LinkedIn at Shae Clark. Shae's an interesting name. You just look for First Bank Connection and you'll find it. But again, thank you very much.